Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Brian, for the introduction and for everyone who has joined us today to be a part of this meetup. So, I'm going to walk you through something that I'm really excited about and I have been pretty much involved in, which is the new LocalStack Model Context Protocol server. So, in this session, we will basically cover what it is, why it is such a big deal. And I will be showing some like really cool demos of how we are trying to bring like AI agentic capabilities to the local stack ecosystem and how our developers and our users can basically benefit from that. Uh, so before we get started, I would just try to just dispel like what this whole MCP thing is and what we basically mean by this whole AI agentic ecosystem. So I'm pretty sure you might have seen this meme in different format across a lot of social media stuff going around there. But this is as simple as that. Like MCP is currently the hottest trend right now in the AI ecosystem. And if you go and check out like every company's like social feed or all of the new developments that we have been doing, the one thing that pops up quite often is that they are all announcing their new MCP server. So before we get started with this whole MCP thing, it is very instrumental for us to understand like what MCP really is. So just for a quick intro, MCP stands for Model, Context, and Protocol. Now, most of you who have been familiar with the whole AI development going about right now, you would understand what model technically means here. Model is basically your large language or your small language model. So think something like Claude or ChatGPT or whatever AI chat tool they are using right now. Now, one of the things that we can all agree on is that they are great at generating content. Maybe we can disagree on this fact that most of them are not so great at generating content, but they're all great at generating content. The problem is that they really cannot do anything. They really cannot perform actions. If I can give a particular example right now, and this example came about in one of the AI talks that I was watching, is that when ChatGPT came around, it did not really have the capability to kind of search the web. It was pretty much non-existent. But today, if we kind of come across any LLM tool or any chat tool out there that cannot search the web, it's something that we would consider pretty weird. So this is how fast like the whole AI ecosystem is kind of building on right now. Models are not just able to generate the content, but they can also perform certain actions. And you might have already guessed that these actions are being performed by something that's underneath them. The second part that I can maybe stress on is the context. Now, that's the information that we give the model so that it knows what tools are particularly available to it. This is what so many of these AI chat tools are using these days to kind of do certain things out there. And finally, we have got this whole protocol. Now, as I was saying before, that ChatGPT natively did not have the capability to search the web, but now it has. And similarly, every other tool has got some capability to perform certain actions. We basically need to have a certain protocol, a certain foundation, a particular standard that allows the models and allows these tools to basically talk to each other. Now, this is where Anthropic kind of innovated quite a lot. They came out with a new technology called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. This came out, I guess, about last year in November 24. And since then, it has like basically really taken off. So the whole MCP thing is all about like how do we standardize how we give LLMs access to external tools. So stuff like Google Search, your calendar, or in our case, LocalStack. Now, just to give like a pretty good 10,000 feet view, and this is the best analogy that we can get, which comes right from the official MCP docs, is that MCP is like the USB-C port for AI application. So you have your MCP clients, you have basically got an IDE like Cursor, or you have got a chat interface. And these MCP clients can then connect to MCP hosts like Claude. So these MCP servers basically act as an adapter. So you can literally plug them in into your remote service, so stuff like Slack or your Gmail or your calendar, or even like your local data sources out there. So you can create a server once, and then any compatible AI agent can basically start using those tools. So in this case, like if you look at this diagram, like on the right side of this, we can basically prompt like list my render service. And this prompt gets passed to the Cursor IDE, which then particularly detect the MCP tool or the MCP server that can perform the requested task. And then it connects to the remote render service and it executes that particular action. So this is how we try to enable these LLM tools out there to kind of connect to these remote services and do certain actions on your behalf. Now, MCPs aren't just limited to tools. They also provide you resources. They also provide you prompts, samplings, and a bunch of other things. And the whole MCP ecosystem has been really gearing towards a lot of new enhancements on a monthly or even like on a daily basis. And as you can see over here, MCP isn't just like a vanity thing. It isn't just like a framework or a tool that came about and it might just vanish off in about like 3 or 4 months from now. It's something that has been really getting a lot of traction, more and more, and major companies have started adopting this specification. You have got Microsoft, which has got a massively popular Playwright MCP. You have got the GitHub's official MCP server. AWS, which we in fact emulate on the local machine, has got their own MCP server, about 20 or 25 different ones for every single service, which I like really hate. But it shows that they are all in, and all major players are kind of moving in this direction, kind of trying to make the whole MCP thing the universal standard for AI applications out there. Now, why build an MCP server for LocalStack? Like, why just jump into a bandwagon with every other company out there and say, like, hey, we're excited to announce our new MCP server, which we just did about a couple of weeks back. So the fact over here is that LocalStack is incredibly powerful, but the developer experience in this whole new AI world opens up a lot of new opportunities. Now, what we kind of saw when developers were using LocalStack is that they still have to deal with a lot of manual work. For example, if they want to start LocalStack, it is like LocalStack start. If they want to enable verbose locking, they have to see like debug equals one LocalStack start. Now, if you want some other customizations, you have to like really craft these very verbose commands with specific flags. Apart from that, if something goes wrong, you basically have to start shifting through thousands of long lines to just find that one error, one regression about what is particularly going wrong with your application. And finally, manually running those deployments for their IAC stack. If any one of you has been using LocalStack before and trying to deploy any ISE code, you would always like understand this. When like CDK local deploy, then you have to like figure out what went wrong, restart the container, do that command all over again, and kind of try to find like where exactly things are basically going wrong. So the goal over here is to kind of create this whole hands-off mode, this sort of an agentic workflow, where a developer could just let an AI take control of their local stack container, and the AI can basically drive the whole development and testing process forward. It's also good because in this case, local stack sits on your laptop. It's basically acting as a local sandbox, and you won't have to deal with like a lot of these issues around like, okay, giving it access to the real cloud where it might do something stupid. Everything that the MCP server and the associated AI agent would do, it would pretty much like sit on your machine. And even if something goes wrong, you can just restart your container or stop your container, and you can pretty much like start from the scratch. So this is where I introduced the LocalStack MCP server. And our whole idea is that all of these manual tasks that I was trying to describe all of you, the MCP server can basically transform them into conversational workflows. It can be passed to the whole AI agent, and that AI agent can do certain operations on your behalf. So just as an example of what this MCP server is capable of right now is that you can just imagine having this whole AI partner, and you can technically say to it like, hey, start my LocalStack container. Hey, can you analyze particular service errors in my logs? Hey, can you deploy the CDK or Terraform application on LocalStack? So you can technically do all of this with just the MCP server without having to like really handhold or without having to like really do everything like on a manual basis. So our whole overall idea is that there is your intent and there is a whole action. And this MCP server kind of bridges this whole gap between your intent and the action. And the way that we do it is by fully enabling this whole local agentic workflows for your local stack experience. Now, you might be wondering like how capable this local stack MCP server really is. So this gives like a pretty good bird's eye view of all the tools that we support right now. As of now, we don't support resources and we don't support prompts, but this is something that we are taking a look at right now. But we have got support for about 7 of these tools. I would say the most important one out there sits at the top, which is local stack management. This basically manages your local stack experience in and out. So stuff like starting your container, stopping it, restarting it, doing your status checks, it can do pretty much all of that. The deployer tool is very interesting because it is what deploys your CDK, Terraform, or CloudFormation code on LocalStack. We have got the whole logs analysis tool. It analyzes your logs. It tries to find out all those errors. It tries to summarize the whole log output out there. And it also like filters those service requests so that you can basically pinpoint what exactly things are going wrong. And finally, we have got the LocalStack AWS client, which is basically there to like run certain AWS CLI commands against your AWS services running inside the LocalStack container. Now, basically, like these 4 tools are available right there in the community image. We have got these other tools also, which is like the IAM policy analyzer. Like this basically sets your IAM enforcement levels, and it also generates like your IAM policies. You have got Chaos Injector, which is basically like handling the Chaos API that Kaya would be talking about in the next talk. We have got a CloudPods, tool that basically like manages your local stack container snapshots. So these three tools out there are basically in the pro service, and you basically need to be on the appropriate pricing tier to be able to use them. But in this particular session, I would try to showcase most of these tools and how they exactly work so that you can get an idea about how you can best get started with them. So now the question would be like, how do I get started with this? How do I configure this? And this is a super easy question. Our MCP server is available right on the NPM registry, and it is distributed using NPX. So all that you need to do is install Node.js on your local machine, and you can pretty much like create an mcp.json file, but that totally depends on what MCP client you're using. If you're using Cursor, it basically involves like going to your Cursor experience, going to the settings, going to MCP integrations, and adding this whole MCP JSON over there. For Q, for Cloud Code, or any other AI tool out there, like the experience might slightly differ, but the fundamentals are really the same. You need to specify the LocalStack MCP server. You need to specify the command, which is in this case is npx, and you need to specify the arguments, which will basically pull this MCP server and will run it on your local machine. Now, as I was saying before, some of these tools will require an auth token. So tools like, let's say, CloudPods, Chaos Injector, IAM Policy Analyzer. So if you have an auth token, if you are a licensed user, all that you need to do is set it through the env block in your mcp.json. So just pass in the whole local stack auth token as an environment variable, and you don't have to do any other separate configuration out there. Now, with all of this said, it would be very plausible for me to showcase like how the whole experience looks like. Enough of the slide. So let's get into the quick start and get into a particular live demo. So I'll try to pull out my Cursor editor over here. For people like who are not aware about this, Cursor is, I would say, like very much the hottest IDE, AI IDE that you can get right now. You can argue like, okay, there are much better tools out there, stuff like Windsurf or Amazon's new IDE. I guess it's called as, okay, it's Kiro, which is very, very new. But there are like more tools out there. So you can technically get started with any of your favorite tools and the experience will be mostly the same. I'm using Sonnet 4.5 model in this case, but we have mostly tested it across a variety of legacy and the new GPT and Sonnet models, and our experience has been pretty much the same. So you can choose whatever model you feel fit in, and yeah, that should be easy for you to get started. There has been a question on LinkedIn that this MCP server runs also locally, right? That's the best part. With LocalStack, our main emphasis is upon running things locally. So obviously, this MCP server is going to be running on your local machine. Only for certain tools like CloudPods, we do connect with a remote service, but even that happens on your local machine. You don't need to do any separate authentication. Everything can basically like live. Everything is basically being operated through LocalStack's internal APIs. So as a quick start, what I can do is I can showcase how to get started with LocalStack. So I can just pass in like, can you start my LocalStack container? And what happens in the background is that once I pass in the prompt, the MCP client in this case, which is Cursor, it will try to invoke the MCP server tool. So in this case, the tool is basically saying that it has been specified a particular action, and the action over here is start. Now it has invoked the local stack management tool, which is pretty much like responsible for all these operations. And once we specified that, it automatically invoked the local stack CLI and it started the local stack container on my behalf. So no more writing like local stack start or specifying any other Docker Compose or Docker CLI command. All it takes is just say like, can you start my local stack container? So that's the conversational experience that we are trying to build over here. I can also do like restart my local stack container. And what this would again do in the background is that it would stop and it would start my local stack container back, just to ensure that we have a fresh state from where we can start. So you can do like a bunch of these operations, like right from your Cursor, from your Claude Code, or even ChatGPT, which now supports the MCP integration. So I can see another thing, like check the status of my local stack container. And this would specify status as the action that it needs to take. And it would return like what's the current status of my local stack container right in this case. So yeah, that's a runtime version 4.10, which is very much like the new version of LocalStack that we just released about a couple of hours back. So everything is looking good. Our container is now ready to accept requests. So that's all it takes. And it does not like even require an auth token. So you can go on your Cursor, you can go to tools and MCP. That's my LocalStack MCP over here. And that's what it basically looks like. So all that I need to specify is LocalStack MCP server. That's the command, that's the argument. And you can find all of that in our announcement blog post, which I will link on the YouTube live chat, maybe in just a few minutes from here. And in this case, I have specified an auth token. I have just hidden my auth token over here just for my security purpose. But that's all it takes for you to get started with the LocalStack MCP server. So just going back right now and just bringing my slides back. Yes. So I can like do a more expansive demo right now. And in this demo, what I can do is like I can use the MCP to deploy plus test a CDK application. So I'll use the MCP server to deploy like a fairly complex serverless CDK app, which has been built by Brian as part of his AWS for Frontend Developer series. He's gonna link the blog and the GitHub repository down in the YouTube chat, so you can go and check it out from here. But what we will do is like we will prompt the MCP and say like, hey, can you deploy the CDK app? And once it is deployed, we can like further do some extensive rounds of testing just by like running manual prompts. We don't like even need to say any, we don't even like need to run any manual command to have it do certain things. So let's go again to my cursor and try to get started with this. Awesome. So let me just zoom it in, and here we go. So in this case, that's where my CDK app lives. The whole CDK app is kind of encapsulated in this DynamoDB stack. And what we're basically doing is we are deploying a CDK app that sets up a DynamoDB table, a Lambda function, an S3 bucket, which has got a website that is distributed using a CloudFront distribution. So what I can do right now is I can say that deploy my CDK app on LocalStack. That's all it takes. And once I invoke this particular like message, what the MCP tool is gonna do is like it is gonna run the LocalStack deployer tool. And in this case, the deployer tool has got these three parameters. It has got an action, which in this case is deploy. It has got this directory. So since I'm located in this particular directory, it just happened to pick that up. And finally, it has got a project type, which is CDK. Right now, the deployer tool basically supports CDK, CloudFormation, and Terraform. So if you have got your ISE code in either of these frameworks, you can pretty much use that. We are trying to expand support for other ISE frameworks as well. Now, for the sake of actually showing you like that something is happening in the background because we don't really have the streaming support for this setup, what I can do is I can say like LocalStack logs F with the -F flag so that I can really follow on the logs. And I can like really show you that things are happening in the background. Like LocalStack is really bootstrapping the CDK project, then it is deploying all of these resources. And in this case, like the resources are pretty extensive. Once this is done, what it will return is that the CDK deployment is successful, and it is going to share us all the outputs. So in this case, the output is going to be the API gateway URL. It's going to be the CloudFront distribution. And if you're like running this app with the MCP server or even without the MCP server, the app is basically gonna look, I guess, something like this, where it will show like AWS for front-end developers and the response has been received from the API. So it's pretty much like in and out. Like it allows you to like deploy your ISE project without having you to like run any specific manual commands. It also like returns all the resources that we have just created, which is gonna be DynamoDB table, Lambda function, API gateway, S3 bucket, CloudFront, bucket deployment with assets, and all of these things around here. I can like take this for a short run. So it has got like this whole API gateway URL. So what I can do is I can use curl to kind of just query this particular URL. And it is going to return to me that this particular message, which says like you successfully received data from our DynamoDB table. It's pretty sweet, and it pretty much validates what we are trying to do here. Now, let me show you something more interesting. I can literally tell this MCP server that, can you check, let's go back, can you check what Lambda functions, S3 buckets, DynamoDB tables, and CloudFront distros have been created. So this is where it will try to use the LocalStack AWS client tool. And what the LocalStack AWS client tool does is like it basically generates respective AWS CLI commands and it directly runs it against the LocalStack container. So you like don't need to have like particularly AWS CLI or AWS local installed on your machine. It's like running everything inside the LocalStack sandbox. So even if you like run things limited within the whole CRUD interface, like creating resource or just like removing a particular resource, you don't have to worry about certain things because everything is being run inside the LocalStack container. So you don't have to worry about your AWS credentials like being passed to the MCP server. That's not going to happen. So it has like listed out all the resources that we were looking for, which is pretty sweet, and that's what we're looking for. So this is where I guess like I can even go a bit extensive. I can say to it like, can you analyze my local stack logs and find out errors or issues within my deployment? So again, like this is going to call the whole local stack logs analysis tool. It will scrape out all of the local stack logs that you have got over here. And it's going to like list out that, okay, these are like all the like happenings that's going about. And if something has gone wrong, if your deployment has particularly failed, it's going to list out to you that, hey, these are the issues that I have encountered. And maybe you can take this action, particularly resolve this particular issue. While we were doing like a lot of internal testing with this MCP server and we were like using it for a greenfield project, the MCP server was independent enough to take some actions where it involved like going to the logs, figure out the issue, going back to the code and exactly fixing the code based on what the issue was, and just coming back, rerunning the whole deployment and letting us know that the whole deployment is now successful. So that's the kind of agentic capabilities that we are trying to build over here. We already have certain tools in this case that you can use, but we can obviously go beyond that. We can add more tools depending on what your use case is and depending on like what kind of things that you would like to see with the whole MCP server. Given the fact that we are like running a bit short on time, like these are all the things that you can do if you're using the LocalStack community image. If you want to get more of that, we have more MCP tools out there. For example, in this case, we have got, let me just minimize this a bit. But yeah, we have got this whole LocalStack Chaos Injector where you can use our LocalStack Chaos API to kind of inject some fault experiments within your infrastructure stack. We have got the whole LocalStack Cloud Pods, and this is going to save a Cloud Pod, push it to the LocalStack web application, and you can basically distribute that with all of your colleagues. We have got the whole IAM policy analyzer. So you can basically ask LocalStack that, hey, I want my IAM enforcement mode to be pretty strict. So if your service APIs are trying to call to another service API that it does not have explicit permissions for, LocalStack is going to fail it and it is going to output that into your logs. And again, like your application can pick that up from the logs. It can automatically fix your IAM policy code and do a bunch of things from there. So hopefully I would get to showcase more of that in some upcoming demo that I can do with some other topic out there. But let's just switch back to our slides and let's get to the whole finishing point. So yes, what are our future plans with this whole MCP server? As I have reiterated before, like our goal is to basically provide a full sort of like agentic capabilities for the local stack ecosystem. And given the fact that we have already gotten so far, our future plans is mostly like going around like expanding the whole performance and reducing the whole log analysis and command time. So in my case, it wasn't that slow, but in some other slower machines, it can be like really slow to get these operations done. We also want to expand the whole deployment support. Right now, we have support only for CloudFormation, for Terraform, for CDK, but we want to expand it to also SAM, which is another AWS framework for building serverless applications, and Pulumi, which is massively popular in our community right now. Building upon the whole IAM policy analyzer, we also want to build a policy advisor. So suppose, let's say that you're building an application and you have got this whole IAM policy set up, but your application technically needs only 3 policies, but you have got about 10 or 15 of those permissions defined. So with this MCP tool, we hope the AI agent can particularly like run your application. It can run certain tests. It can find those least permissive policies and figure out like what policies or what permissions you don't particularly need. And it's going to automatically suggest to you that, hey, maybe let's remove that out and let's try to like just trim down the whole permissions that you're basically spending on. And finally, we want to make this whole development lifecycle more intelligent, more conversational, where you don't have to like deal with a lot of local stack specific CLI commands or with a lot of platform specific things that you have to learn. AI agents can particularly do that for you, and they can do that very, very well. And I guess with this whole demo and with this whole experiment, with this whole project that we have ran, I guess it's a very good validation to have basically pushed it out. And finally, we are trying to expand on the usage. So definitely take this up, configure it on your AI client, Cursor, Amazon Q, Cloud Code, whatever you're using right now, and let us know your feedback. We definitely want people to like be trying out this MCP server and letting us know what they're using it for. We've already gotten so much amount of positive feedback from the community out there, and we definitely want to build on whatever you are looking out for. So I guess that brings us to the end of this session. Feel free to drop in any questions you have got in the YouTube chat or the LinkedIn comments. And you can definitely connect with me on any of the social platforms. We are also on Slack. So if you have got any feedback for our MCP server, please drop us like a ping on the Slack, or just like send us a note either privately or on the help channel. We would definitely appreciate that. Thank you.